knows what's expected, has great reference materials. A new person can come into the organization, and no matter whom they may encounter, that person can say, oh, here's how you find the materials you need to do your job, right? So that really intrigued me, and I really bought into the idea of building those capabilities throughout the organization. And many of you have gone out and gotten information security training and certifications, and often you're teaching the security office a new technology, right? Because we can't cover the whole space, and we appreciate that. So I started asking around, how can I find materials? How can I find resources that are available? And I kept coming across the same name. People kept saying to me, you need to talk with Cathy Hubbs. And so a year ago, I was in DC for a day, and I was sitting next to Randy Marchani. People remember Randy came to visit, well known. And I said, hey Randy, I'm in DC, what would be the best way I could reach Cathy Hubbs? And he said, she's sitting right over there, right?
Convenient.
So, Cathy Hubbs has been kind enough to come down and visit with us and talk with us about user awareness, communities of practice, how we build information security competency throughout an organization, and it's just embedded inside the organization. Cathy's a certified information systems security professional. She's a certified information systems auditor. She also has a certificate in the governance of enterprise IT. And she's taken the opportunity throughout her career to volunteer in developing security professionals. And so the latest example of that is, I believe you're on the Higher Education Security Council with EDUCAUSE.
Yep, that's right.
So,
is it time?
You to Cathy.
Thank you. Thank you all. They have me mic'd for the recording, but can you hear me in the back row? Okay, usually that's not a problem. So thank you all for the warm welcome, and Kevin and Tim inviting me down here today. And we all know it's National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So that's another reason why we're here today, right? To celebrate that. So this morning's talk, as Kevin was saying, is really focused on the value and the importance of security awareness. And so before I start, I didn't really make my rounds around the room completely, but I want to see how many, by show of hands, are not in IT. The IT crowd. Kim, you stand alone, but you're the one I talked to, so that was good. How many are faculty? Are there any faculty? Okay. Did I have a third question? How many are dedicated full-time? Their position is for security, information security. High hands, glory. Okay, about 6 or 7? Okay, not bad. Thank you. Just kind of trying to get my audience straight here. Come on in, come to the front row. Join the group. So I always think when I go in, especially to another university, it's kind of nice to kind of see where I come from and where those parallels are. So I've been at American University, which is a private university. I've been there 9 years now, 9 years in July. It was chartered by an act of Congress in 1893, so not quite as old as UNC-Chapel Hill. Princeton Review students voted us 3 times in a row, or not in a row, but over the last few years, as the most politically active by students in the nation. So that might give you a little understanding of kind of our student body anyways. That can work well. Sometimes it's challenging. The size, we're 84 acres and we have about 60 buildings. You can laugh by comparison, right? So it feels very contained. Prior to being at American University, I was at George Mason University, which is a state university, and a little bit more like UNC in terms of kind of sprawling in different parts of regions, different campuses. And so when I came to AU, I was like, oh, Kevin, I can do security here, no problem. Just put my arms right around that. A little challenging. Our organization, so I also looked at the central IT organization here at UNC and thought might want to look at how we are. So our CIO 2 years ago reported to the chief financial officer, who reported to the president. 2 years ago, that changed, and so our CIO reports to the president, and he now has the title, I don't have that accurate up here, it's CIO MVP, so I think you guys are vice chancellors, same kind of thing. And only 4 units, right? So we kind of roll up. Our central IT, well, I have that on another slide, is around a little over 100. And then the thing that's very interesting to me, and we'll talk about it a little bit more as we go into the presentation deeper, is the CIO has a group called the Enterprise Risk Management Team. When it formed 4 years ago, it was actually reporting to the head of risk. And that's pretty traditional, so this is a little different. There's several reasons for, but those are the members of Enterprise Risk Management. And I'll talk more about what that is later on. Remind me if I don't. And then the other thing is so again, at AU, we always think we're pretty central, but we're centralized. But look at the numbers. We have decentralized IT big time. It's really interesting that when we did this a few years ago, this effort, and we refresh it every year, but just kind of allowing the campus, and there's a lot of reasons for showing the distribution. But the central IT is primarily focused on enterprise services, infrastructure, network, et cetera. And 5, yes, a total of 5 dedicated security people, including myself. So just a little flavor of how AU set up. Has anybody seen this before? Oh, goody, because it's a really old one. And when I was putting together my slides, I was like, I love this, and it doesn't really fit, but I don't care. I'm going to put it in here. I'll make it fit. Because it's just so fabulous. Because what I feel like the takeaway is, it's really about working together, which is what we're talking about this morning. What are we trying to protect? What are we trying to protect there? What is the value of what we're trying to protect? What are the vulnerabilities? What are the threats? What is the probability of those threats actually happening? And how do we measure success? So do you think this was successful security measures?
We're taking a piece of road directly under the thing.
That's great, right? It's fabulous. I actually saw something like that very recently and went, oh my gosh, they need to see that slide. They would have done that differently.
And the gate never wears out.
Exactly. It might have been a Randy Marchini old slide. Certainly was back from those days anyways. So information security programs are built on processes, technology, and people for sure, right? We know this. And we need all 3 to effectively reduce and manage the risks associated with our institutional data that's stored, transmitted, transacted, posted, and archived, both on and now off our networks too. It's everywhere. So this morning, we're focused on you, right? And how we can raise community awareness and gain value by leveraging each member of the organization to do their part in reducing risk and winning the battle against the bad guys. And why is this important? How many have heard of privacyrights.org? A couple of you. If you haven't, by the way, I'll make these slides available so you don't have to write things down. It's a great, they started in 2005, but they have a database, and they actually have volunteers that are going out and looking through all the news articles about data breaches that have occurred, and they actually go back as information gets updated, and so they post this. Well, I first started putting my slide deck together at the end of September, and I grabbed this slide, not this number, but a number before this, around the 12th of October. There were 46 more breaches. I updated this last night, just since October 12th, that were reported that we knew about. So I was like going, oh my gosh, it really is like, it's probably like if I could do it live, right? There'd be like this spinning going here. So that's one of the reasons why we're here today, because it's not stopping, right? These data breaches are happening. Another slide that I kind of pulled out from a deck, this is actually 2013 data, and it's a little bit small, but I just want the power of the slide is it shows the sheer magnitude of data that's being kind of transferred in our information-rich environment, and the number of individuals logging in and out of systems. So from this 2013, it said 277,000 Facebook users log in a single internet minute. And And why is that important? Because it's really hard to know where your data is at in a university, right? There's university data, but all this social media and these Dropbox and Google Drive and things, you can't stop people from doing screenshots and dumping things down and putting things up. So we just need to be aware of just all the places this data can be, and hopefully through security awareness and technology and processes, we can start to put our arms around this. But it's really phenomenal, I would say, in the last 5 to 7 years to just see the rapid explosion of the attack surface, right? So as security professionals, IT professionals, even users, right, just ordinary, hey, I use technology, it's a little frightening out there. So that's one of the reasons why we're here too. How many people are not familiar with the organization EDUCAUSE? Okay, 1, good. So that means that we get around. That was a student too, so that's not unusual. They're an organization that provides a lot of IT resources. They're kind of built on volunteer power, and as Kevin said, I've been actively involved with them since 2002, and I'm mentoring governance, risk, and compliance right now, lots of different things, co-chair of the annual security conference. But one of the things that they do is they do an annual survey of peers to say what's hot, what are these top 10 things that as an institution you should look at. And so I did a screenshot to look over the year, and you can see information security in 2016 landed at the top. One thing that they did different this year is they categorized all the top 10 into different categories, and they called it differentiate, reinvest, and divest. And so security was reinvest. So it's almost like there's a lot of conversations going on this year to say, is it good that information security is number 1, or is it bad? Like, wait a minute, for those of us that have been working in this field for so long, why is it still number 1? Or, but that's okay maybe, right? Or maybe it's just like there's finally some more attention and we realize the complexity of some of the things that I've pointed out today. So it's important to kind of note that, well, I think we already know, right, that it's, the truth is that institutional information security is everyone's job, right? And there's all these data breaches, and it's continuing to really make the top of the list. Another thing here was advice. So that top 10, do you guys read the top 10 every year? They usually do a very deep article on it, and so there's a lot of really good information. If it pertains to your particular area, it's worth kind of digging down and deep, and so they had some advice. And one of the things I wanted to note that relates to our conversation this morning is the top one, right? Policies. Policies help us have a shared understanding and a common language about expectations. So I think that that's important. Security and awareness is what they emphasize. They say, yep, you've got to develop a training framework and keep at it, right? We need to do that because the threats and the attacks keep being shifting. Some stay the same, some change. Everybody has a different role and a different perspective, so we really have to reach out to them. The third one, depth and defense, which is a security phrase for sure, but really I thought what was really outstanding, don't rely on a single control. Don't rely on a single job position, right? A single person. There's a lot of people with different kind of approach of what they're working on, and we need all eyes on this problem. And working together cooperatively, and we'll talk about some of those things as we move through this presentation. And then annual updates to your governing board, and I meant to look that up. Do you guys have a board of trustees? Is that what it is? So are you asked, maybe not you, but is there somebody that reports the state of information security up to the trustees annually?
To leadership.
Okay, that then present it to the trustees? Does it go all the way to the trustee level?
I think lately there's been other concerns at the university.
Okay, and that's not that unusual. So by the way, so no reflection on UNC, right? So at American University, it's taken a while, and Gartner is, how many people have heard of Gartner? Great, excellent. I like when I'm talking to people, yeah, I don't have to explain it as much. So they were saying by 2018, if you haven't been asked to report at the highest level to your boards about information security routinely, you will. So it's definitely a trend that's going up because they've been, they understand that they have a fiduciary responsibility to take on and confront risk, in particular cybersecurity risks. So they're asking for reports. Some challenges are how do we package that up correctly, but it's very important. So we keep talking about how can we fit that in when there's so many important topics going on in a university environment. And then about 3 years ago, EDUCAUSE started doing another poll that was just expressly focused on security issues. And I'm just kind of like, reiterating what you may know, but there's actually kind of quantitative data out there that says what we know, right? That the 3 strategic information security issues in 2016 are security awareness. And security awareness training and education was number 2 last year, and it's moved its way up to number 1. So people continue to think that this is how we're going to do this, especially in a very decentralized environment. So it reinforces the perception that our community members' awareness strengthens our overall security posture. I swear I'm going to get done with these statistics any minute. So this one, I think, again, just keep on hammering at our issues here today, right? In 2016, these are really real threats. ISACA was formerly kind of an audit-focused company, but for the last few years, they're known for information security, assurance, risk, governance, management, training, and events. And here's their top 3, right? Social engineering. Who can tell me an example of social engineering? A trick that works. Come on, state the obvious.
Just walking into the building looking like a competent person will often get people stepping away from their keyboard for you.
Absolutely. That's true. That's a great example. Another one that comes via email. Yep, phishing. Phishing is a good one, right? A lot of the huge major newspaper making events are all about phishing, and right? And there's targeted attacks, right? Spear phishing and whale phishing, right? Which is like try to get the president or the provost or your CFO. So there's a lot of the wire transfer messages going around. Have you guys received any of those? I've seen some shaking heads. Ours have. I was actually at a board meeting in November. It was the first time, so it was pretty great, and had the provost, the president, this was so, I wish I could have recorded it, the president, the provost, and the CFO talking in front of all the board members, because it was an open forum, and said, yeah, you just can't trust email anymore. They keep writing and saying, yeah, and so the president said, yeah, I keep getting them from you to the provost, and the provost goes, yeah, but I don't write that way. And then the CFO commented that the ones that came from the president are not as informal as the way the president writes. So they were actually, their awareness was super duper high. But it's fantastic because those wire transfer ones are working in across domains, but they're particularly targeting higher ed. So this social engineering stuff absolutely works, and phishing is the one that we're seeing because it's just so easy. And now I don't have my phone, but right with the, you can help give tips, and we should continue raise awareness of that. But when you're on your computer screen and it's a larger real estate, you can kind of look up at the URLs and things. But when we're in our little phone devices, that real estate is really small, and people are in a super big hurry, and so they have a tendency to click, click, click. So getting them to be aware regardless of the device they're on is super important. The other thing is advanced persistent threats, right? Being aware of, who wants to describe what an APT is? Does anybody know? Yes.
An APT is, it's a group of people, or it's a campaign by a group of people who are determined to get to a particular resource by any means necessary. Phishing, intrusions, whatever, social engineering, however they can deem best to get to it. That's what they do.
I think that's very good.
And their skills are advanced.
Their skills are advanced, but I think another little piece that I would add on to it is they're very stealthy. So they're really trying to come under the wire. For those of us that were back with, what were they? all those worms back in the day that were super duper noisy, and they'd set everything off, and we'd be running around going, worm attack, we're infected. And these the opposite. Very slow, doing a phishing campaign, getting legitimate credentials, logging in, and then that's a real hard thing to detect, right? We have to really think about what kind of tools and awareness we have around then our notifications, because Cathy Hubbs should be able to log into American University's network. So what does that trigger for the people watching that, right? So that's exactly what they're trying to do with advanced persistent threats. Come in, kind of embed, and then start to move laterally and see how they can hopefully escalate their privileges, find vulnerabilities and weaknesses. So that is a really particularly scary area. And then I moved to the middle with insider threats. And insider threats about 5 or 6 years ago was really, people were really saying it was our big concern. And they are saying it again. And I think what's missing is the conversation about what's meant by insider threats, right? Or what type of insider threats more particularly. And so the Verizon breach report is done every year, is one of the resources, and there's another resource as well. And it turns out that most of the insider threats are unintentional. And this comes full circle to our security awareness and our training, right? Is that people inadvertently, systems administrators, security professionals, all of us, right? There's this possibility that we're inadvertently, accidentally sometimes causing harm, leaving a port open, not doing a patch, there's a variety of things, and that truly is what's constituting the majority of these insider threats. There's the classic, hey, least privilege, you don't work for the institution anymore, let's make sure, we take away your credentials. But it turns out on a day-to-day basis that it's this unintentional thing that happens. Do you guys use file integrity monitoring at all? So that's kind of something that watches over and sees when a file changes, often a system or a configuration file. So that's a good thing to kind of, especially not maybe on every single system, but systems of concern. And that can often catch kind of those kind of unintentional things. We have those running on some of our systems. So this is more details about what I was talking about, the insider threat. So there's a forum called the ISF, Information Security Forum, and they're saying that malicious insider behavior combines a motive to harm with a decision to act inappropriately. There's negligence, and then there's accidental, right? And so I was talking about the accidental, and that's what they're finding, a trusted employee doing a seemingly run-of-the-mill kind of a task, and like taking files home on their spare time, or some of the things that we talked about before. So, information security is a journey. By a show of hands, how many believe that UNC-Chapel Hill's Information Security Awareness Program is great? At the top. Awesome! That means we've got room for growth. We're not even going to do another vote. Let's just stop there. Thankfully, I was kind of thinking this morning, going, wow, what if they all raise their hands? I'm just going to have to walk away. So another report that came out, this is from 2016 also, is a survey across a whole bunch of domains, not just higher ed. And this was that purposeful planning of awareness programs is an area that we all need to really grow strategically, right? What are we focusing our efforts on in particular? So this was 369 people polled, 21% of the respondents were from the education sector, and you can see, I think education is blue for those of you in the back row that can't see. So not surprisingly, resources and time were identified as the two biggest challenges facing information security awareness programs in the educational sector. Not enough time, not enough resources to get things done. Looks like UNC is doing a pretty good job, right? Having people come, but so there's opportunities. There's opportunities, for example, could go and look at your, and I don't know if you do this already, but I recently was somewhere and read this, that you could use your help desk tickets or your service desk tickets to see where you're having repeat calls and repeat issues, and that may be an area to focus on security awareness. For those of you that aren't in central IT, go and look and kind of think through where you're seeing repeat problems and issues. The other thing is EDUCAUSE's HISC, the Higher Ed Information Security Council, for the first time ever, they have a security and awareness training group. They published last fall a 2016 calendar with ideas for every single month. So it was kind of already laid out for you with resources that were already packaged and could be branded by your particular institution. So that was a way to kind of have a year-long campaign at the ready. So I wanted to give those as some ideas. So how do we do it, right? There's different messages, different constituents. So here's a couple ways. One is that I did both at Mason and here, not here, but here in DC, at American University, is to partner with everyone. Talk to every single department in your university practically that you can. Talk about required training, any required training, not information security training, period. Because, right, it's very hard in a university, everything's additive. If you go talk to, physics, no, that's not a good one. Psychology. Everybody wants to have something added to every new staff training and every new faculty. Everybody has a topic that they want to add on, and this would make us all be in training all the time. So one way is to go and talk to people that have required training and say, is there an opportunity to weave in or sprinkle a message of security awareness? So one thing that I did at George Mason was there were 2 faculty members that were introducing, this was for students, a program called Technology Across the Curriculum, TAC. And they had decided that, this is around 2002, 2003, that all students, undergraduate students, needed to learn about 10 things about technology. So it was like a 1-credit course. So I went and I approached them and I said, can one of those things be cybersecurity? And it was. So they weren't thinking about that originally, and it was also called information security, less sexy, but we got that embedded. The other thing is at American University, it happens that our IT department has a training department, and so every time they're putting together training, they let me look through their slides. Now this is time consuming, but not really, kind of you understand, it's SharePoint, right? It's setting up a SharePoint site. Let me just look through and see what your kind of instructional slides are, and even if I put like a little message box that says, hey, here's an opportunity to think about least privilege. Here's an opportunity to ensure that you go look over here and make sure that the people that you've given access to are those that you expect to have access, right? Or read only. So there's opportunities that are context-based, which often work very well for users, because we find, for those of us that have been in information security for a really long time, that information security is like this, is referred to like it's this one singular thing, and it's not, right? It's everything, as you started out speaking with us, Kevin, today, whether you're a systems administrator, a network engineer, you're an admin, you're an AV person, you're writing papers, you're doing presentations, somewhere in your role, you have some needs and awareness around security. So I'm a big fan of trying to look for opportunities to weave the message in everywhere. And finally, to the title of the presentation. Anthropologists, Jean Lavey and Etienne Wenger coined the term while studying apprenticeship as a learning model. And my master's degree from a bunch of years ago was actually instructional design, which is around learning models. And I love the term communities of practice, but essentially it was coined to refer to the idea of community that acts as a living curriculum for the apprentice. And that's really what we're doing here, right? Trying to get people to come together and think about security awareness. One that I did at American University was, I called it SALT, right? It was a kind of a play on words, but it was the security systems administration leadership team. I was mentioning that we were very decentralized, like you guys as well. So it was made up of all the members from centers and institutes, the onesies and the twosie IT people across campus. And it was an opportunity to routinely meet. And they would drive the agenda, but I would help have the resources put together, bringing guest speakers, et cetera, bring in people to do training on whatever they felt they needed. Sometimes we came together and had more purchasing power. So it was a really good opportunity to be able to coordinate things. The other thing was, when I was at George Mason my first few years, I had 0 staff. So I needed them. So it was driven out of a need too, right? Because the power of having this community to sit down at least once a month and talk about the concerns out in the far reaches across campus was very useful to see what they were seeing. So I think that communities of practice are fantastic. Another example of community of practice, a few of them, is VA Scan. VA Scan is one that 4 universities in the state of Virginia got together in 2002, going back again, and put together an opportunity to share resources in the state of Virginia. There's something like 80 universities, and back in 2002 there were very few universities that had full-time security anything. But our 4 large universities did. So we came together as a community of practice and focused on how we could mature our program, as well as share resources back to these other universities of all sizes, including community colleges, and help them repurpose and package things. And we'd even go and do consultations to assist with them. And we felt that that was worthwhile, right? Because if we all raised our level of awareness, then hopefully we would raise the bar of security and reduce the risk. RI, affectionately known, REN-ISAC, the Research, Education, Network, and Information Sharing and Analysis Center. Whoa. Does anybody know what an ISAC is? I see one nodding head. So information, do you want to share? David? No. Alec. I met him last night, but there were a few people at the table. Alec, do you want to share what an ISAC is?
Sure, you have a good example up there, which is REN-ISAC. It's in this case, for REN-ISAC, it's a group of higher ed security professionals. There's different tiers of access, but the group shares information like, we're seeing phishing from these email accounts, we're seeing phishing from these IP addresses, we're seeing attacks from these IP addresses. Does anyone know about this document? So it's kind of a collaborative environment that's created to share both data and ideas, comments, how institutions are working.
Thank you. Thank you, Alec. So ISACs, there's actually less than 10 in the country. And the REN-ISAC, the Research and Education Network, is for our sector. But there's one for the electrical grid. There's one for the hydro. So it's actually one thing that recently happened, as Alec was referring to, as tiers, but it's a closed membership because it's an environment at the highest level in that closed membership to share advanced warning and advanced threats. It's truly a community of practice of people that are definitely looking for the threats. And so they're saying, hey, I'm over at my university and I'm seeing attacks by these particular addresses. Are you? You might. It's very important to do this. This extends your bench of staff dramatically, right? Because there's thousands of people in the ISAC in higher ed. If the attack's coming to another university, believe me, they're coming to us next. And maybe you're not able to watch over it, but by being part of that membership and being able to watch over that, you can start to be more aware of that. In addition to having those advanced warning and threats, sometimes they're proactive and sharing things. Sometimes they're writing signatures to put on tools and systems that a lot of us nowadays, things are kind of heading towards best of breed. I came and I looked at your pages and then talked with some of the staff in IT, starting to become that the big players in the technology field are kind of the same. And so that's both good and bad. The good part of it is that it opens us up to be able to share knowledge with each other about, hey, I know my team inside was able to script this response to block this known attack. Here, you can share it. So that's a particularly valuable resource. There's other things going on as well with them that provide value. And then the HEISC, we've talked about them many times. I think everybody in here, except for one, knew about EDUCAUSE, and there's a variety of resources. One thing that they have is a security guide that's based on the ISO, kind of the 14, 13 different areas, and make up an information security program, and they have pre-packaged resources that work in those environments. And then here's where I said I was going to come back to ERM. So how many people are familiar with what, it might be of a different name, but an enterprise risk management group? Okay, so ERM, how about a risk registry? Heard of any, is this making up one? Project manager, Terry? Yes. So an ERM, typically that is, it started kind of in the financial world, but it's coming into higher ed. There are people that have them, but where I think this is this great group, high level, I showed you the different people at AU that make up the membership, but they're focused on risks writ large at your institution, not just cyber. So it's bringing a collection of people from different, across the divisions, across the functional areas, to really talk about what the concerns are against the strategic goals of your institution. Why is this helpful? Because it helps you prioritize your risks. People at the highest level making decisions about the probability and impact of something happening to the institution, and then deciding we're going to put the resources behind this. And if they're not, then you get to, in basic 101 risk is, you accept it, you defer it, you ignore it, not so good. You transfer it maybe to like an insurance company or something. These are basic. This is the movement of information security. You cannot have 100% information security. You eventually will have something go wrong. We all know we're under attack all the time. That's why we want all of us to be working cooperatively with eyes on everything. So the ERM, or some sort of a governance group that is focused on the risks across the institution and capturing those risks in a risk register. It can be an Excel spreadsheet. Somebody that's looking at it and saying, these are the concerns, and rating them and scoring them as critical down to low, and then deciding, this is how we're going to drive our work effort. It's huge. It's a maturing process. It takes time to get people on board, but the advantage is huge because we have so many fires. It starts to move people away from that reactive mode, hopefully, and focusing at the highest levels in the organization. And it's an awareness opportunity. It is a community of practice in that the information security person is sitting in there with all these other high-level people and bringing information security risks to the table and having an opportunity to have a conversation about what's at risk and hearing what they perceive as the risks. So I think I might have already said it, right? That we already know that. We'll never have enough, right? That's why we want to enlist all of you. We'll never have enough IT security staff. The force multiplier is by reaching out and building these communities of practice and having more eyes, right? An awareness training is that example, right? We're going to get more done if we have more people looking all the time. And I just think that that's really the value. You get multiple perspectives when you bring in people from the outside. Did we talk about, oh, that's next. Okay, right, so we strengthen our bench by being able to leverage things like the REN-ISAC, by HISC, by coming together and looking at how our peers are doing things, by talking amongst ourselves. This is how we're going to get things done effectively. More eyes for detection and prevention. So really where I kind of wanted to come to and drive to is what works at UNC. I understand that you guys have an ISL group. Remind me what it stands for, Security Leadership?
Liaison.
Liaison. And that meet monthly, much like the George Mason SALT group. They drive the agenda along with your central security office and are doing things the same way. Well, I wanted to take an opportunity to engage all of you, right, to look at the things that you're doing today, think about other opportunities that you might want to advance, and capture them. If you look on your seats, you had these. It's a collection for me. No, it's not. And there aren't coins in there for you. But they're little Post-it dots. But where are we at with our time? I think we still have some time. And I wanted to have several minutes of time. So if you all turn around and look at the back of the room, there's 8 large Post-it notes. And the idea was I talked with Tim and Kevin before I came down, and I wrote down some of the things that you guys are doing currently for building security awareness and training, and some future ideas, and open to having and encouraging you to write down some as well. There's Post-its here with pen, there's Post-its on that side over there, and there's some back there. And the idea is that I'm going to get a live poll here of what green sticky is working from your perspective, what's working in terms of security awareness and training, and then red, what you think really isn't working or might not work, right? So it's this opportunity to really give a live kind of feedback on some of these ideas. What are you going to do with it? Take those results back to the following monthly ISL meeting at a minimum. That's one of your formalized communities of practice, and have a discussion about why these are green and why these are red, and possibly for what we didn't generate today, we may be able to get, or you may be able to get, some more energy around where the gaps are and the opportunities, more importantly. So that's kind of what this portion and the ending of this presentation is an opportunity to get a live poll. So if we have time, and I think we do you want to take a few minutes to, do people feel like they have some thoughts that they'd like to write down and add? And if they do, I want to spend about 5 minutes letting you do that and go put your Post-its up before we vote. Please. Why don't you go take a little spin around and look at that first? Yep, because some of them are here, right? So we have the basic quiz that's tied to the 90-day password that's required annually. Your communication kits, which I understand are pretty popular. Guest blogs. Newsletter is a future idea. But I'll let you look.
Great, we have plenty of time, 12 minutes.
Oh, good. I wanted to have about 10.
Good. Perfect.
So like I said, on either side and at the back, your right as you're facing the back wall, there's some big stickies with giant pens. So if you do block letters, if you want to add some Post-its up to the wall, then people will have a more comprehensive opportunity to vote on things.
So are these things not listed, right?
The ISL meeting is something that just is happening. And you know what? Maybe I should do that. And I didn't do, you know what I realized? I also left off your annual training. I can't remember if annual training was up there.
It's tied to the ends.
If you don't see it, put it up there, please. That's the beauty of working together cooperatively. Although there's a future one blobbed in there too. But go ahead and feel free to stick up another sticker. I see some people writing, so please, we have like at least 12 minutes or so I don't think it will take that long.
I'm Jan from the School of Nursing.
Hi, Jan. Nice to meet you.
I have the slide that you did with the gate and the two
You
words
do?
are here. I have a current update to that I won't say out
You
loud.
can send it to me.
But it's, no, not just an observation. So states me, I recently set up an account with the Social Security Administration, and you can request extra security. And if you invoke extra security, you essentially have 3-factor. When you log in, there's always a checkbox. I want to skip extra security today.
Did you write to them?
No.
I'm going to use it.
I just set it up this week, and I'm just stunned.
I love that you said that, Jan. I may share it if I get people's attention, because I was over at the Carolina Inn, and I understand they're like business centers, so we should be, more aware. But I went to go print out my slides, and it was running McAfee antivirus, and it said, "Do you want?" Yeah.
So
it's kind of like, what? We need to call their security people, and the Social Security Administration's had like a bunch of problems.
yeah, so I haven't quite figured out who to write to, but I thought this was just stunning.
Maybe I should go knock on the door.
Extra security. Yeah, you're there. You're nearby.
I am. I could go there. So it looks like people, which is fine, are going around and adding their stickers, which is great. And by the way, there's 3 green and 3 red. Guess you know that. If you're colorblind, that's a problem. But I have some other colors. I should know that. I have 2 people, both my boss and my direct reporter both have that problem. It's not a problem. It's a different way of seeing the world. It can be. The world's not really adopted. Have you read that they have some glasses now that they've brought out? Have you? Yeah,
I'm sure they're way outside of the range
of pricing, right? But it's kind of exciting. That's okay. I hear somebody saying, oh, I was speaking into my mic like super loud and realizing it wasn't projecting that way. You absolutely can do red and green, right? Because it's your perspective of whether it's working for you or you don't think it's working for you, right? So it's just kind of an on-off voting. Positive? Not so much.
Could be both.
It might be both to some people, right? But hopefully, right, there'll be some distinction and threshold. Seeing a bunch of greens or something, a bunch of stickers anyways over there.
Somebody over there tossed the red ones and said, I don't want to be a hater, and they tossed the red ones.
And that's okay. Yes. Can I share that?
I didn't use mine.
Excellent. Hey, for those of you that are still voting, somebody had mentioned, 2 people just mentioned that they didn't use their red. That's fine. If you think things are working, you don't want to use your red, that's great. Don't feel like you have to be I'm using this person's term, a hater. Thank you for helping me define things.
Where did you get your shoes, really?
Nordstrom's, about 6 or 7 months ago. And they were one of those things where, yeah, it was a gift to me.
But there's an interesting divide.
Oh, that's really interesting because I heard something.
Red
Yeah,
versus green.
yeah. Good stuff.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. David was in school, wasn't he in school for a while?
No, I know that. We sent the
Did everybody have a chance to vote? Great. Hey, this is working out really well in terms of timing, because I kind of thought I would just let you go on, but it gives us an opportunity to kind of talk briefly on the results. And it's interesting and an opportunity as you move forward with the outputs. But there are some that have some ties, right? And I was talking with somebody briefly, we were caught eyes, and said it will be interesting to have that conversation about, you know, amongst yourselves, is like, what is that split and that perspective? But this is really the power of these type of conversations, is why is there a split, and understand it from those people's perspective, and then you can drive your limited resources and your limited time down that path. So one thing was, you and I were talking before, and you were saying that there were a lot of requests for communication kits. Turns out that there's kind of an even split. So interesting. I mean, you're just a small population here of your entire campus, but that's an interesting thing. I saw a lot of people, I know you were the certs for the ISLs, going down the path of either creating your own kind of, I call those little C certifications maybe. That's really nice. So it seems like there's a lot of energy around that. This one, one thing that I don't know, I'm not a big, but there's a ton of greens on providing routine updates on changes to policies and processes. So it seems kind of like, but clearly people want to, and I understand that, right? Because you're not really seeking out the central policy page all the time. So it is important, especially for role-specific changes, to get that out to those people. So what's that distribution? So maybe the ISLs can be part of that distribution update, right?
And we'll be so happy to hear. we have a person who works on that, and she kind of eats and breathes policies. You guys don't realize the license you just gave her. Be careful what you wish for.
Indeed, indeed. Right. So at AU, often in our IT division, we're often trying to get that kind of feedback when we come together a couple times a year in different events, because, right, we're also just nose to the grindstone. This is moment in time. This is a segment of your group, but it gives you something to go back and talk about, and then maybe a benchmark to kind of move forward. So I thank you all for participating in that. So really, somebody came up to me, Jan, is she still here from the nursing program, or did she? Hi, Jan. So now I'm tangenting for a minute, because I just thought it was fun. Is that okay? Yeah. She was sharing, you know, that this is another thing, right? We're all trying to raise the bar of security awareness everywhere. And she was talking about setting up a Social Security account on the Social Security admin's website. And they actually have 3-factor, which is great, 3-factor security. However, as you're going through the process, you're prompted to check off and go, yeah, I don't want to do it. You can bypass it. So this happens in universities all the time, right? We're going to do all this stringent stuff optionally.
Like the gate slide at the beginning.
It's very much like that's where she came up with it to say.
Made me think of it. You have this great opportunity to be secure. I don't feel like doing it today.
Right.
Maybe tomorrow.
Right. So just kind of keeping our minds on it. And what I said to Jan too was, and it may be not always easy, but is sometimes it's set up that way intentionally. And sometimes things get, you know, the word is, go set this up with 3 layers, and then it gets to the operational state, and people go, they implement it, and the person that was kind of requesting it in the first place is off to whatever their next 300 things are on their list. And nobody really made the charge in the first place kind of came back and saw what it turned out, like how, the end result. So there's that opportunity for each of us to go back to that place and go, is that what you really wanted to do, right? I mean, for a long time, people would send out links and the actual password resets, plain text in emails, right? Hopefully that's not happening anymore, but every once in a while I get a company that does that to me, and I call or I write them and say, hey, you might want to make that change. So it's nice to help people secure their environments. So this is the end of the regularly scheduled presentation, but I'm happy to have any questions, answers, dialogue, ideas, comments, thoughts.
Thank you so much, Cathy, for coming.
My
down to
pleasure.
meetings today.
Yeah. Yes,
So,
Mel.
Do you make a distinction between security awareness and security knowledge? So I think, in thinking of fish, most people can tell you what a fish is. The problem is they can't show you, if you put two of them together, which is a fish and which is not. So how do we get to knowledge and not just awareness?
Yeah, so it's a challenge, right? Because people are so fast-paced, and it's really just getting that. Oh, so the question was, right, security knowledge, security awareness, one over the other, and in particular, the example was a fish, right? People can kind of go, oh, I know I should be aware of a fish, but I can't really tell you what a fish looks like. So there's a school of thought. Is that kind of a pun or something? Okay, not so much, but anyways. There is some people thinking that self-phishing is working, and American University just started doing it. So we're actually constructing phishing messages and sending them out to the population. And once it's non-punitive, somebody clicks on it, then they get redirected to a tips page that says, this is what, in this particular type of fish, you should have been aware of. And then we're doing the same population. We'll wrap that up in January. We'll have done it for almost a year. And hopefully the trend will be a reduction in clicks. So that's one way, but it's tough. It's tough. I'll go back to you, Terry.
With that type of self-phishing, are you making a distinction between clicking on the link and then users who put credentials in, or are you not giving an opportunity?
So the question was, are we just tracking the clicks or also those people that are putting in credentials? And so my response is, it depends on what the fish is. So some of the phishings are just click the link, which can be bad because it can redirect you to a malicious site. You don't know what's on that malicious site. And some are, hey, click this link and put in your credentials. So it depends on the construction of that message. So we are doing both. And we started out I have a resource that I'll share with all of you. There's a peer of ours, Brad Judy, at Colorado, and he did a really nice blog in April of this year on setting up self-phishing at University of Colorado, I believe. And it's a really nice kind of things to think about when you do this, because it doesn't work for everybody. Not everybody's super excited about participating in a program like that. They might think it's annoying, right? And what's the value add? So there's some really good things, like everything I've read is do not make it punitive. And start out being particularly noisy about, hey, we're doing this. Yes, we are. Here's who it's going to come from. Here's exactly who we're targeting into on this day, in this particular time of the day. And see what happens. So the first people we did it to were the president's cabinet. I asked.
Go big or go home.
I got the support of my CIO, and I asked because I said, first we ate our own dog food. We did it in central IT. We did it in a small group, then we did IT. And then I said, hey, could we do it with them? Because I think that would be great feedback. And if it works well for them, then they're advocates at the highest level. And then if they get complainers, I'll go, well, they said so. But anyways, so there are people that are saying this works and it doesn't end, keep going. So that's one way to do it. I mean, in addition to many other things, but I think this is a case where you have to have technology too. Terry.
Are you including students, and how can you just do it one time, because with all the turnover that happens?
It's not one time. It's continuous. So, and in fact, in October, so the building blocks were alert, 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 we're doing it, we're doing it, we're doing it. And by the way, eventually we're going to start doing this almost advanced persistent threat-like, right? Stealthily, we're not going to tell you, so that we can get those trends. And so we're not doing students because we're actually, some people can roll their own. We actually bought a product and it wasn't super expensive and it was all about the reporting on the back end. That's why we bought a tool. And so we're doing it frequently so that we can see, not frequently, but we started out once a month. In the month of October, we're doing it 4 times and getting more tricky, less obvious on the messages themselves and doing things like attachment and putting in your credentials versus just a click. Phishing is tough. You know, there's the awareness and there's the tips and trying to transfer that to knowledge, but in this particular case, there's a real need, in my opinion, to have a very strong, we talked about this at dinner and you guys are doing it, is a strong, achievable, workable, operational way to respond when somebody does click, right? To have incident response for phishing, protocols that work, and technology that can try to block and catch this stuff, because it is just a really hard problem. Anything else? Seize the day. Put Kevin and I out of work so we can go on vacation.